Hey everybody, so this week we're going to be going over small group communication, and within that we're going to go over leadership powers. And this is one of my favorite activities because part of your participation and discussion, you're going to be looking at the leadership powers of the Avengers. And I normally get to do it in class as an activity, but since you're online, you're going to do it on your own. But it's still really exciting for me just to read them all. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right on in. So with this, what is a small group? First we want to define it. A small group is a collective of individuals that have a common purpose and that are interdependent with organized rules. Okay? So with this, what it means is that there's a bunch of people that get together, and they could be a bunch of different people that are coming together, but they have a common goal. And what is that common goal? Is it to solve a problem? Is it to create a committee to plan an event? Or is it just to discuss one's day? Okay, so it could be a group of friends, and that's a small group. So that's their collective purpose. So a bunch of people getting together to discuss or talk about something. And when it's interdependent, meaning that you are not fully relying on one person to do something else, but you are relying on them to do something. What I mean by that is, think about when you're in a group project. If you're going to say, okay, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this, and I'm going to do this. You're doing your own thing. What you do doesn't really matter with the other groups. But then if they don't get their job done, it's going to affect what you're doing. So you can do everything that you want, but if they're not getting their job done, then you're depending on them. But yeah, you're independent over here, but you're depending on them a lot of time for the group project in general, even though you might have your own specific roles. Now, you build upon each other as you go through. Some groups that are phenomenal to work with is where you first meet and then you break apart, and then you discuss a little bit here, or then you do your stuff, they do their stuff, and they do their stuff, and you get back together and say, hey, we did it all, and then you discuss and do all of that, and that's great. But a lot of times that's not the case. A lot of times someone might come and be like, hey, I forgot to do it, or I only did half, or I did it wrong, and then as the group, you have to go through and solve that issue. So this is what a group is. So with a team, when you're in a team, you want to make sure that you know the specific purpose. Why in the world are you meeting? Are you meeting at the coffee house just because it's a place to meet and you can discuss your day, you can gossip about people, you can do whatever? Or are you meeting to solve a problem? Are you meeting to plan homecoming that's coming up? Or are you meeting to plan Christmas that is just around the corner? Okay? You need to make sure everyone knows their exact roles. So who is doing what? This goes back to the group that you can look at. If you are in a group project, you might say, you do the PowerPoint, I do the outline, you write the paper. Something like that. Those are specific roles. But you always need to make sure that there's a leader in it. I do this activity with when I have an in-class class, and one of the things I do at the start is they're able to work with groups, and they have a small group, and they only can, I put them in a desert island, and what happens is they're in a small group, and they're stranded on this desert island, and they can only use the items on them and in their backpack to survive. So they have to figure out how they're going to survive. And the key to it is they have to figure out who is the leader, who is going to do what is the roles, who's going to go get the water, who is going to go do this, who is going to be making the decisions, who is going to be hunting. You have to know the clear roles. If you don't, then someone might be doing the exact same job someone else just did. So you need to make sure those roles are clearly defined. You want to make sure that everything you do is going to the specific purpose. Yes, you know your specific purpose, but sometimes you might stray out and go over here and then come back. You have those people who do that, and sometimes it's just to discuss something else outside of the committee, which is okay, because that's how you get to know each other more. That goes back with interpersonal communication. But you want to make sure that everything you do has some direction to it. If you're just getting to know someone else, it does have direction to the goal. You're getting to know your group members better so that you can work better for that specific goal, for that purpose that you're trying to have. So everything you do, or pretty close to everything you do, needs to be directed towards that goal. Don't just do something random over here that's going to waste the group's time. Do that on your own time, okay? And then the focus of it needs to actually have content in it. You just don't need to have something random going on. Again, if you're just having a random discussion, sometimes that is good because it's getting to know your other group members. But sometimes getting off topic is not actually the content that you're looking for. Now, with this is pretty basic, so we're going to go through this part really fast. So there are different stages. So first, it's the opening stage. You get to know your partner. I'm I'm this person. Oh, hi, you're this person. Where are you from? What's your major? What do you do? Yada, yada, yada. Once you get to know them, then you start identifying exactly what people are going to be doing. You're going to say, okay, well, since you're an engineer, why don't you do the blueprints of it? And since I'm a communication major, after you have all of that, I can present it to people. Now you have to tell me about it so I can understand it more. But you can kind of figure out who is going to be doing what. Again, you're doing the PowerPoint, you're doing the outline, I'll do the paper. Okay? And then the business. This is the actual work of it. The discussion, trying to solve the problem, trying to get to that outcome that you're wanting to do. And once you're done, then you finish it, you do your presentation, you do whatever, and that all falls under the business of it. And then you want to look back and say, what went really well, what went wrong, especially if you're going to be working with this group multiple times. You always do a reflective and say, okay, I worked with that person, but it didn't really work well. Maybe if I tried this approach with them, it will work better. Or, okay, our group did this and it went really, really great and they ate it up. Let's do it again for our next presentation as well. Once you do that, you reflect on it, you evaluate how it went, and then a lot of times the groups might disband, they might close, they might go away. For group projects in a class, you might not ever see that person again. But if you're working with them, that group might disband, and then the next Monday morning they might get back together for the next problem. But sometimes if you work at a bigger company, such as a university, then you're going to be working, and with that, you're going to be going through, and you might have just different people as you go through. You might have one committee, it's solved. And you go through, and this person, and you might have the same people throughout the same committee, but you might have a new person, or one person leaves, or 5 people leave. But the group itself, that meeting for that specific purpose, will disband. Again, sometimes with companies, it's ongoing and it's constant. So the group, it's just a constant circle between these 3. Now, when you do the format, there are 4 formats we're going to really discuss. So first is roundtable. This is like King Arthur, where everyone sits at a round table and everyone has equal say. Now, to do roundtable, you do not actually have to sit at a round table. You can sit at a big square table. You can sit all throughout, just dispersed. It does not have to be equal. But the whole point of roundtables, everyone is just discussing and everyone is able to say what they believe equally. There's not one leader, there's not one person who's up front directing people, pointing to people saying, oh, what do you think? Oh, come over here. It's everyone just kind of casually talking. This is like your coffee house format, where you're just talking and you're spitting out ideas, and this is the best way to brainstorm. Now moving on to the next one, this is the panel. A lot of times this is where you have a group of people who are experts in the field up on stage or up there, and then you have the audience members. And the audience members might ask the panel a question, and the panel might ask a question back to the audience. But then the panel members might ask each other questions. Okay, so it's a big circle type thing where everyone's kind of talking and everyone has the ability, but there's the experts up here on a different platform, or there's a line that's dividing them or something, with the audience who's trying to learn or trying to understand what the information is coming from the panel. And again, the panel can talk to the audience to panel, panel to panel. It does not matter. Then looking at it, the symposium is similar, but it's actually a lot different. This is where it's more of the one person is speaking out to the crowd. There's not really feedback unless someone stands up and says like, I love it, or you suck, and starts throwing tomatoes. Okay? But this is where one person or multiple people are talking. But if there's multiple people, the panel members really don't talk to each other. Normally what happens is one person might come up and they might discuss, and then they might go off stage, and then the next person comes up and they might then discuss their topic and go off stage. And the audience is really there just to listen and to understand. And then to mix those two together, a forum is basically the perfect mixture between these two. So how the symposium, that you go off in the audience, it's just one member talking to the audience, it's kind of the same because the panel does not talk to each other like it is under panel. For a forum, the members speak to the audience speak back, but the panel members do not talk to each other. Okay, so the 3 are different because this one really everyone can talk to each other. Panel member to panel member, audience to panel member, audience. This is just really panel member to audience, or speaker to audience, and this is really speaker to audience, audience to speaker, but it's not speaker to speaker. Now, when you have we're going to go over these different types of powers, but first we want to make sure that you know that Power is saying that you're controlling someone else, and it's the ability to control someone else. So we're about to go over all four with real-world examples and my favorite, television examples. Okay, so legitimate power. This is where the person actually legitimately has the power. They are the boss. It doesn't matter if they're good or not, but they are the boss up there. Okay, so they have the title of director. They have the title of leader. And they are legitimately the boss that legitimately gives them power over the people who are under them. And an example of that in TV world would be Michael Scott. Okay, if you watch The Office, you know that he's not really the best boss. Well, he's the best TV boss for us. But he's not the best, but he legitimately has power. And he can do whatever he wants to Toby because he legitimately has the power. Now, an example of that in the real world would be President Trump. Now, no matter if you agree with President Trump or you love President Trump or you hate President Trump, he is the President of the United States and he legitimately has power. This goes back to if you agree or you don't agree with Obama or Bush or Clinton or George Washington. They are the President of the United States. They legitimately have the power. You don't have to agree with it or not, but they legitimately have the power. So moving on to the next one, it's referent. This is where someone is trusted and respected. They got put in that position because everyone loves them and trusts them for that position that they're in. The TV example, kind of, it's more of a creator and a star and all of that, would be Tina Fey. I absolutely love Tina Fey. If you read her book and you talk to most people with it, you understand that she's one of the most creative people in TV realm today, but everyone who works under her says that they trust her and that they believe that she's a good leader, so they will listen to her because she's earned that power. This is a big time when you really want to do it. This goes with service leadership. And you kind of get up there because people believe in you and they trust you. Again, George Washington, people trusted and they did all of that. So he would be a great example of that. But I said George Washington earlier for legitimate. Now, can you have multiple different forms of power? Yes, you can have all five. You might only have 1 out of the 5. You might have 3 out of the 5. But it is okay. You can have multiple. So George Washington was legitimately the President of the United States. But how did he get there? People trusted him. Now, there's a lot that goes into history and George Washington and all that stuff. But there's a lot that people trusted with George Washington. Okay? The next one is reward. This is where you're basically giving someone a gift. You're giving someone a bonus. You're telling someone about all of this stuff and you're giving them raises. Okay? Jessica Day off of New Girl would be a great example. She believes that everyone deserves love. If you watch New Girl, she's constantly giving people praise. She's constantly giving people compliments. She always has gifts ready. She plans the best birthday parties. And she has reward power. Because when you give someone something, they in turn really feel like they should give something back to you. So you have power over them. A real world example would be someone who gives you a gift, and you a gift, and you all get a gift. Yes, it's Oprah. Oprah Winfrey gives out cars. She gives out love. She does a lot of stuff. But the thing is, people love Oprah. But when you give a car to someone and the whole audience gets a car, you're probably going to love Oprah because you're going to be like, well, she gave me a car. I have to love her. That's the power over them. Now, I'm not saying people only love Oprah just because she gives them cars. There's a lot more reasons. But when you give them a big gift, such as a house or a car, then that is an example of it. Today's world of Oprah, which is one of my favorite people ever, would be Ellen DeGeneres. Okay, she still does that. But Oprah is one of the biggest forms because I love to do the Oprah stuff. Okay. And then cohesive, not cohesive. Okay? Cohesive. This is where you have fear and threats. Okay? You're scaring someone to get what you want. Now, the TV example of this one was a little bit harder because I couldn't find one from a sitcom. The closest I got would be Amy Poehler when she was Leslie Knope off of Parks and Recreation. Now, if you watch Parks and Rec, you know that she is a phenomenal leader and she loves parks. She loves everyone and she does some great things. But if you cross the line with her, then she does scare the living crap out of you, okay? She will threaten you and she will get what she wants. A lot of times through hard work, but she's not scared to threaten someone. A lot of times her threats are kind of more comical because it's a sitcom, such as I will waterboard you. Now that doesn't sound that comical, but if you watch the episode, it is. But Cohesive is through fear and threat. So your people are doing what you want them to do because they're scared for their lives. They're scared for their family. They're scared for other items. A great example of that would be Adolf Hitler. Hitler is known to be one of the greatest leaders of all time. And the reason is because he was able to move the world into a war. Basically, him alone. He got millions and millions of people to do what he wanted to do. And how did he do that? Well, first, it was the legitimate and then the reward. People actually thought he had good ideas. They were like, wow, this is a good leader. Until it was a certain point where they kind of realized where he was going with it, and it was too late to back out. Then all of a sudden, it kind of got crazy, and, well, you've read history. So Hitler kind of went off the hinges, and his ideas, people realized where they were leading to. So he turned into this form of leadership power. Again, he was other forms of leadership power, but this is a great example of cohesive leadership power, okay? And an expert, this is where someone is an expert in the field. They're very knowledgeable. They know what they're doing. They are very skilled. So an example of that would be doctors. An example of that would be teachers and professors, such as myself. One of my favorite TV examples would be Ross off of Friends. Now, if you don't know what he's doing in this episode, Ross teaches paleontology, which is dinosaurs. Okay, and someone asked him, what does the, I think, velociraptor sound like? And he says, well, we don't really have proof, but I think it would be something like, okay? Friends is my favorite show. I can talk to you all day about Friends. But Ross has a doctorate in his field. So he is an expert in his field, and he knows what paleontology is. He knows all about dinosaurs, and he loves to talk about them, as his friends always say. So paleontology, he would be expert power, because most people don't really know about dinosaurs. I mean, yes, we're all experts, because we've all seen Jurassic Park and the new Jurassic Worlds, but Ross really knows it. An example of that would be your professors. This is a lot of my coworkers, and we have communication week, and we all dress up and do different things, so I always like to put this picture out there, okay? Now with this, you're going to have different group ideas. When you have different group ideas, there are certain rules when it comes to brainstorming, okay? So you want to make sure that you don't criticize. Even if someone's saying, well, let's try to make $1 million. Okay, well, let's grab $1,000 and put it in a barrel and light it on fire. Then you might be like, okay, that was stupid. But instead, you don't want to criticize. You want to be like, okay, well, I like getting the $1,000 idea. Let's go from there, okay? But you want to also make sure that you strive for quantity, not quality when you brainstorm. The more ideas you have, the better your end result can be. Because if you have 1 million ideas, then 1,000 of those might survive, and they might be able to join together to create like 5 phenomenal ideas. So the more ideas you have, the better. And with this, you want to make sure that you're combining ideas. Like this idea might be good but have a few flaws, and this idea might be good and have a few flaws. But if you put them together, their flaws solve themselves, and overall, it looks a lot better, okay? And you want to make sure that you think of the wildest things when you're brainstorming. You can always narrow down, but you don't want to be capped with, oh, well, we can't do that because of this. Just talk about the wildest things, and then try to narrow it down from what you're doing there, okay? And then when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you avoid groupthink. This is where one person says something, and everyone's like, oh yeah, good idea. And then someone else says something, oh yeah, good idea. Because if everyone's saying the exact same thing, the ideas might seem phenomenal, but when you actually do it, there's going to be a flaw in the system. Someone needs to play devil's advocate and say, well, what about this? This might not work. And the ideas might survive, and the ideas might be phenomenal. But if someone says, hey, we're going to do this and this and this, and then someone questions it, well, how is that going to work? Tell me more about this. Then the idea is going to be solid. So you want to make sure that you avoid groupthink. If you notice that your group is doing groupthink, you should play devil's advocate. I always play devil's advocate in my group just because it's fun, and it's really great to see it. But sometimes you might have to say, I'm just seeing the other side here, because other people might get really mad at you and be like, why are you just running all of our ideas? So make sure you tell them, like, I'm just trying to look at all ideas first before we move forward, okay? Now with this, groups, you just want to make sure that they're growing, that they're actually having a purpose, and that you are growing as a group, and that you're raising awareness and concern for the people around you and the people within the group, okay? So with this, there are different forms of group, and the biggest one I use is focus groups. But then there's also educational learning groups, which I guess I use this a lot since I'm a teacher, and this is always a group. Now remember, small group is about 3 to 8 people, so when I'm teaching a class, it's more of public speaking. But the focus groups are great, and so is the educational learning groups, because you're able to develop and learn with each other and all discuss, or then one person can teach the small group of it, okay? Now, with this, there's a problem-solving sequence, and we're going to quickly go over this because this is probably going to be on your final intent, but it's not as important as thinking about groupthink or the leadership powers. So, first you want to define and analyze the problem. Why in the world are you meeting? What does that mean? Why are you here? Okay? Establish criteria. Well, with our group, we're going to do this, this, this. You also want to talk about the social norms. What are the rules going to be? And then how are we going to do this? Kind of have a criteria and a guideline for it. You might be able to go out of the lines with the guideline, but if you have the criteria of the guideline you want, most people will move forward with it. And they might go out of the lines a little bit, but it'll look more like this instead of like, this. Okay? And you want to make sure that you identify all the possible solutions. There's not just one solution to a lot of problems. There's multiple. So make sure you brainstorm, have many ideas, combine ideas, talk about that, and then identify it, okay? And then you want to evaluate the solution. You want to look at it and say, okay, is this solving the problem? Yes. And if it does, you can move forward. If not, you want to select it, and if it's working, great. If it's not, then you want to make sure that you're testing it, see why it's not working, and then maybe if it doesn't work, move back up here. Now, this isn't just for groups. This is also for interpersonal conflict, which we'll go over a little bit later. But you want to make sure that you're kind of looking at the criteria and saying, okay, what is the issue? What are some solutions? Now let's go back up. And we're going to talk about the problem-solving sequence again when we talk about conflict. Now, this week, you should be going over different leadership powers. I have a PowerPoint uploaded that has all of the Avengers on, not all of the Avengers, because as we all know, there's a lot. I have a lot of the Avengers on there. And I want you to go through and I want you to tell me which one you think that Avenger is. So if you have Captain America, then you can easily talk about Captain America has this one type of leadership power. Only pick one. Don't have 50, okay? Well, there's only 5. But only pick one and argue for that one. Don't say, well, he can have 3. We know that they can have multiple, and your classmates might argue for a different one. And then you can be like, oh, I also thought that as well, but I picked this one because I thought this one was more. Look at the one leadership power. And then what else you're going to have to do this weekend, or this week, is you're going to need to go and you're going to need to find a movie that has some form of group. And you're going to talk about the group sequence, okay, the group dynamics. Who does what, who's in what, and discuss that. So pick any movie you want. One of my favorite examples is the movie Now You See Me. It's a bunch of magicians getting together to end up robbing a bank and a lot of other things. So they get together and you're able to know who is what within the group. And there's 2 movies that really discuss who is what, and their roles are really defined. And if one person lacks in their role, then they're not able to actually do this. So go ahead and do that this week, and then we're going to move forward. And don't forget, you have speeches coming up, and we are almost done with the semester. So you all have a great week. Bye, guys.